Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've just been to see Frankenstein, written and directed by Guillermo del Toro, based on the Mary Shelley novel that she wrote when she was like 22 or something, in 1818. Very young. It kind of occurs to me that I'm only really familiar with Frankenstein from the imagery of him, from the 1931 film, the Boris Karloff one, that like cemented what Frankenstein looks like in the culture. Because actually, I realise I've not seen any of the previous adaptations. I've not read the book. He's just a figure in the culture. And actually, my main kind of Frankenstein reference is probably Young Frankenstein, the Mel Brooks comedy. You must be more familiar with Frankenstein than that.
Yes, but not... I mean, I've never been a big horror fan. So, I mean, I've seen the James Whale film. I've seen Bride of Frankenstein. I've seen Young Frankenstein, of course. And then you see Frankenstein crop up in all of these...
Yeah.
Horror films and comedy films and so on. But really, the James Whale films are my main point of reference. I did read the novel as a teenager, though. I'd be hard pressed to tell you anything about it now. Really.
Yeah. Well, having not read it and just having read kind of the plot summary just now to get a sense of where it differs from this film, because I realised that I don't actually know the story. Right? I know that a doctor, Victor Frankenstein, brings a dead body back to life in some sense, but actually the rest of it I don't know. And so what I find out is that this adaptation seems to adapt the source material reasonably liberally. Like there's stuff about the creature wanting a companion, and in the novel Victor starts work on it, whereas here he doesn't. Things like this. So there are it seems to be hewing reasonably closely, but it's taking liberties where it wants to, and it's changing things.
I don't think it matters. I mean, I think Del Toro has said, and I agree, that when a character becomes enshrined as myth in the culture, you can take all kinds of liberties with the story. I agree. Nobody complains that a Dracula film isn't faithful to the Bram Stoker novels. Yeah, Dracula becomes a figure with a life of its own that can go in many multiple directions. Right?
No, I agree. Well, people probably do complain about that. But
people will complain.
But I know what you mean.
Especially British people will complain that it's not faithful to the novel.
Yeah.
But really, who cares?
Yeah. This film has been made either for or with Netflix, because I've been turning on my TV recently and seeing it pop up on the opening screen of Netflix.
It's going to be showing on Netflix next week, I think.
It's not on yet. It's coming out, right. So it's in cinemas just briefly, which is where we've seen it at the Mockingbird. So it will be coming out on Netflix. And I'm very glad that I've seen this at the cinema. Although I must say, we like the Mockingbird very much.
Yes.
But I've got the same complaint that I did when we last saw a film in Screen 2 there, which was The Shrouds a few months ago, the David Cronenberg film, which was that the dialogue was hard to hear.
I found the dialogue hard to hear, and actually, I was going to complain about the actors, so you think it's the cinema?
Yeah, so it's interesting. When we talked about The Shrouds, you were saying it's the film's fault. The film needs to do better, and I was saying I think this might be a sound balance issue. And now, having seen another film where this has come up, I did speak to the I think she's actually the girlfriend of the guy who runs Mockingbird. She was working the counter, and I'd mentioned it to her, and I said maybe that's something worth looking at, because it was an issue. Because the film starts off on this stranded boat, kind of stranded in ice in the North Atlantic somewhere, and everyone's speaking in Swedish or something, and you're like, great subtitles, and then when the subtitles go, like, oh, I can't understand a thing now.
I know. I felt
it
that.
was a real problem.
Actually, I literally thought, I wonder if that 10-minute standing ovation that it got at Cannes was because of the subtitles, because I felt I couldn't understand enough of what particularly Jacob Elordi was saying for it to be a problem with me, and I thought I was going to blame the film again.
So that is an issue that we had, at least, that I was kind of having to read into what people were saying in order to get them as much out of it as I could. I do think that's an issue with that screen rather than the film, though. Ultimately, I had a very good time in this film. I thought it was really interesting, really amazingly beautiful to look at.
Oh God, it's amazing.
I love the wide angle. I think this, I've never really paid that much attention to this in Guillermo del Toro's films, but I suspect he does a lot with quite wide angle lenses, and it has a really dynamic look to it. The camera moves a lot, and because a wide angle emphasizes depth enormously, when the camera moves in and moves out and tracks and moves up and down, it makes things really active. and the film benefits a lot from that when it's doing that sort of thing. I think it benefits less from it when it hits kind of more dramatic notes. It might benefit from a different kind of look, but for the most part, I think it's really exciting to look at.
From the very first shot, of the ship stranded on the ice, right, and the camera moves in, and actually you just see the angle which is chosen, the tilt of the ship, and you go, oh my God, this is someone with an eye. This is a filmmaker that knows, like, how to create powerful images, really, because it was immediately kind of striking. It was immediately part of the construction of a particular world. And I was really struck in the subsequent shots of that, right, that looked like, Caspar Hauser paintings, of the sublime. And then there was like the whole Gothic dimension of, the house and the way that it was built and the cellar, right? And Guillermo del Toro has this whole thing. He's got this wonderful book called The Cabinet of Curiosities. And actually a lot of the drawings that you see Dr. Frankenstein do at the beginning of body parts and legs and, so on, seem to come straight out of that book. It's those types of kind of Victorian kind of, textured drawings, right? And he has this thing that, when people talk about cinema, what they don't talk about is what he calls eye protein. Yeah, that a film has to have eye protein. Yeah, not eye candy, but eye protein, eye kind of images that nourish, that create a world, that contribute to meaning and feeling in a film. Yeah, and this film is full of that. Like, when the mother arrives and she's wearing red and she's just a little dot of red in that landscape, or then, at her funeral where, you have her face enshrouded in, this tombstone that you can almost touch. It's so textured, right? And then they put the lid, which is her face, on top of it. I mean, I thought those things were astonishing.
It was beautiful.
Eye protein.
Yeah. I thought it looked wonderful. I did think there were points where I had a little bit of trouble with some of the computer-generated fire in particular. Fire's a hard thing still to do convincingly in the computer, and there are points when Frankenstein sets fire to the tower and it explodes, and you feel the fakeness of the fire, and to some extent I think you also feel the fakeness more generally of, for instance, that imagery of the ship. But I did kind of think it is not that it's I don't know, maybe a deliberate decision, I don't know, but it is kind of placing you in a kind of painterly world, one that isn't quite real, and I'm happy with that.
Yes, work. I'm not only happy with that, I'm grateful for that. Actually, I feel you really inhabited, and it's textured. It's full of all of these things that contribute to a particular type of feeling, right? I felt, it had those elements of, what do you call it when something is both like Victorian and futuristic?
Steampunk.
Yeah, it has elements of that, in the science bits, but not overdone. It's not too futuristic, right?
No, I mean, I would say this is like reason. I mean, Frankenstein, from what I understand, the novel is pretty much the genesis of what we now call science fiction. And the reason I was always kind of attracted, in some sense, to Frankenstein, despite not, ever watching it or reading it. Like, the idea of it always appealed to me more than something like Dracula, because there was no supernatural or magical element to it. It was all kind of, although it's obviously never going to happen, it was still kind of based in science, explained by science. My head kind of worked that way, and I was kind of interested in that. But that kind of, as you say, kind of steampunk imagery, or what in a kind of more advanced, kind of elaborate sense would become steampunk, has always been, I think, kind of part of the imagery, particularly that originates with the James Whale film of Frankenstein. The kind of the getting lightning down from the thing and shooting the sparks and the table and the rivets and the bolts and all that kind of shit.
I mean, I love the idea that Dr. Frankenstein is really reproducing the cruelty that his father imposed on him.
Yeah.
And how that kind of plays out, him being chained, him being hurt, and so on.
It's interesting that we just saw a film not long ago, One Battle After Another, which ultimately comes down to a story about parenting.
Yes.
And so does this.
Yes.
At least in that sense, right? It's like he had the kind of maniacal desire to cheat death or end death because of what he'd been through, particularly with his mother as a child. And even though he was able to do that, he's not a good dad. Because he learned from a bad dad himself.
Yes. So that has that element of it. I also loved the more standard theme of, an outsider, constantly trying to do good, but being haunted and chased and hunted by the community because of being different, right? Which, I think is very beautifully done in this film. I also loved that at some point, Frankenstein begins to read and gets a kind of wisdom or a kind of understanding of the world, that was previously unavailable to him. I think in the original Frankenstein, basically you have that, that beautiful moment, that poetic moment where he's playing with a child and ends up killing her because he doesn't know his own strength.
Oh, right.
Right. This film doesn't have a comparable moment because that is a very powerful kind of poetic moment, really, where he kills in spite of himself. He doesn't know his own.
This Frankenstein's monster doesn't do that.
No, and I think it's a lack. Actually, I would have liked, to have seen him cause damage by accident, so to speak. That kind of. That he is someone who doesn't know his own strength. He can't see difference. He's a child, but he's not a child like other children.
But he is a character that kind of pretty much immediately knows his own strength.
Yes.
Comes to understand his strength quite quickly.
So I'm also not quite convinced by Mia Goth.
Nor am I. So we should say, I think, at this point, that some fucking prick in front of us in the cinema seemed to be reacting very badly whenever Mia Goth came on screen, which was not that many times. She's in it for... She's not a small role, but she's there. But every time she came on, he would just start gesticulating. He'd throw his arms up. And I think he was probably responding to her accent above other things.
Oh, right.
Because I wasn't that convinced by her accent either. But there's nothing really wrong with it. But I thought, how... She's not this bad.
No, she's not bad. No, not at all. I didn't realize that he was responding to her.
I think
I thought he was responding to the film not being faithful enough to the book or something.
He may have been, and he did leave when Frankenstein blows up the building. So maybe he'd had enough of that. But he did seem to have a particular issue with the Mia Goth character.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a particular issue with her. I mean, I just thought that. She didn't look quite right to me. Mm-hmm. I would have liked somebody more willowy and frail, right? She does look very young, which I think is important, for this role. And I thought, her main scenes with him, the scene where she gives him the leaf and things like that. I thought she was fine, but I thought there were other qualities that a different actress might have brought out, both physically, just in terms of their look, but also in terms of their performance.
I think there was too little spark. Her chemistry with the monster is fairly bland, and her chemistry with Frankenstein needs more verve to it because they're at odds and the moment that they meet, they're kind of firing off each other.
Yeah,
and it doesn't fly.
No, so I think there are problems with casting. But not the problems that I've heard other friends voice. So my problems with the casting was Mia Goth and Frankenstein's brother, or Dr. Frankenstein's brother. Uh-huh. I thought, he particularly was like a complete non-entity, really, like a complete blank.
Felix Kammerer, he's Austrian.
Yeah, well, whoever he is. So they lacked chemistry, and also... there is meant to be a sexual tension between Mia Goth and Oscar Isaacs, right? And there just isn't really. I mean, obviously it's verbalized, there's the whole scene in the confessional. So you're told it, but you don't feel it.
I would say it's a problem to me that too much in the film is verbalised. And actually, I was thinking about Nosferatu, which we saw probably at the start of the year, which was Robert Eggers. So again, it's a classic horror tale that's been done again, and that went much more for buying into the mythos and taking things super seriously. This is much more accessible. It's much more fun. Yeah. It has jokes in it and things. But I was thinking what both films suffer from, and I think they were both written by their directors, is a lack of good dialogue. Probably generally speaking, a lack of good screenwriting. I mean, there are points here where they are kind of vocalising fairly explicitly. You are the monster. He says to Victor. He's not the monster. You're the monster. It's like, okay, like I understand. Everyone understands that the point of this story is that we're the real monsters, and that actually this is an innocent creature that we treat badly and so on and so forth. But so maybe it is that obvious that maybe it doesn't matter that you vocalise it. But Jesus, it was a bit heavy-handed.
It was a bit heavy-handed, actually. Though I don't know, right? Because I think this is a film that I'd like to see again and again. And then you think, is it heavy-handed? Is the dialogue at play with other elements of the mise-en-scène in ways that twist it or make it more interesting or add layers, right? Like, so I'm tentative at this point. It did feel heavy-handed. And I also feel that Guillermo del Toro is a much better director than he is a screenwriter, right? And I thought that there were things that you were told that could have been dramatized, rather than voiced. And I also thought that the sometimes the story could have been a lot more exciting or a lot more dramatic had it been told in a different way, right? So here, basically, you have a two-part story, right? The doctor story and then the monster story kind of, converging, right? And I thought that there would have been kind of different ways of telling that story and making it more exciting without it being in two parts, basically.
I mean, I rather like the structure, I've got to say. It also starts with this framing device where we start at the end of the film with the creature attacking the ship that has taken Frankenstein on board. And then they say, well, I'm going to tell my story. And then the monster goes, I'm going to tell my story. But, I did quite, I thought, I did wonder, actually, when the creature said, well, I'm going to tell you my version of the tale now. I'm going to tell you my tale. I did wonder whether it would have that rational element of, he hasn't told you the way it really happened. So, but actually, he picks up from where the story, where Frankenstein's ended, and he carries on, here's what I've been up to the last couple of years. But no, I didn't have a problem with that, and I think it gives the film a sense of a destination. You know, roughly speaking, where this is going to end. Right, we're going to wind up back on that boat, and when you do, this is, I don't think very much. I mean, to be fair, films do sometimes keep going on after we've caught up with the framing device, but it doesn't in this case.
Well, I mean, I think for me, its strength is that it looks rich and astonishing. And it kept me interested throughout. It's a long film, and I wasn't bored once, So, and a complete delight to look at and inhabit, really, and inhabit that world. Its weakness for me is that, I didn't find any of it moving, really.
No.
And the other thing, which might be a problem with me, might be a problem with the sound, at the cinema, is that I felt my grasp on what was being said is too insecure, to be debating kind of thematic elements in the film and how it treats with it, because I think I missed chunks just by not understanding.
I kind of think so as well. I mean, it's funny, like, as good a time as I had watching it, I kind of think that not only did it fail to engage me emotionally, it kind of failed to engage me intellectually as well. Really engaged me visually.
Yes.
And it is a kind of delight in that sense. And there are things to think about, but for me, those things were primarily visual, and they are worth remarking upon. I think that wide angle look really strikes me. The look of the creature itself, he's not the kind of the square-headed bolts through the neck thing. He's beautiful. No. Right? I mean, I didn't know he was played by Jacob. I think I must have heard it, but I'd clearly forgotten it.
Jacob Elordi's fantastic.
When the name comes up at the end, I was like, really? But he's got this beautiful, delicate face. So he's extremely tall. He's quite slender.
He's very... Actually, it's interesting the way that his body is used, because in those first stages where he's born, he's got the body of almost, an adolescent, where it's just too gangly, the limbs are too long, the torso's too long, yeah, and it's all kind of a little bit bent or curved out of shape, right? And then as he evolves, he becomes sturdier and stronger, and yeah, you don't see that gangliness that you see kind of at his, in quotation marks, birth. So I thought, he was very well deployed. It was beautifully designed, and he's very good, I think.
Yeah, and extremely appealing. Oscar Isaac, I quite liked. I think I like that Frankenstein is so egomaniacal and so self-centered and so up himself is interesting. I don't know to what extent this is drawn from the character in the novel, but that's how it's played here, and it really worked, right? Like it's your classic kind of fall from grace. Like he's achieved this amazing thing, but he is also completely inept at handling what he's done, and to the point where he'll burn it down. He'll destroy what he's done because he failed. He doesn't see the value in what he made because he's incapable of handling it. Because and that's what we see through. I mean, it's sort of. I was going to say, is it sexist or is it just like kind of old fashioned that he's the sort of the vicious parent, which obviously he's taken on. We see that in the Charles Dance character, his dad, and that's quite deliberate. But then the Mia Goth character comes in and is delicate and sweet and sort of is able to communicate with the creature on a level he's not able to because he's not. But the guy's this way, the mum's this way, the woman's this way.
I don't know. I mean, so I have mixed feelings about Oscar Isaac's playing, because I think he's quite good, but I think he's miscast. Yeah, I would have liked somebody like Josh Brolin or somebody like that cast in that part. Somebody who could be quite happy doing nothing, right? I think with Oscar Isaac, he's always got to be doing something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. He is full of bits of business and, yeah.
You want somebody at rest. Yeah, you want somebody who, kind of is not emoting all the time, who just is, right? And then the moments of drama, or the moments of action, or the top moments, they can act. Yeah. But, there's, he doesn't have the ease that you would expect of someone with that amount of wealth and that amount of intelligence, and somebody who's kind of got the self-confidence to cut themselves off. I mean, it's almost like there's an over eagerness to do. Yeah,
I do know what you mean, but I also think his kind of level of activity really works for, I think, the way the character is conceptualized, which is one who is that level of intelligence that you talk about it can also be played as incredibly active, which it is here. He wants to prove himself. He wants to prove other people wrong. He thinks he's arrogant, and he thinks this is the way things should be, and so on and so forth. And I think that kind of level of energy works for that.
But he doesn't do stillness or quiet. And after all, he is a scientist. He's someone who should be used to being alone and living a life of the mind. And
a mad scientist, Jose.
I know, but I just think. So I wouldn't call it overacting because I was quite engaged and so on. I just think it's a miscasting, really. And you notice it particularly in contrast with, Charles Dance at the beginning, right? And the boy who plays the child, who is living all of that, but also has moments of stillness and reflection, and it's not kind of always acting or emoting or doing, which I think Oscar Isaac suffers a bit from.
The young Victor is Christian Convery.
Right. Well,
I should also just say that when I said that like the gender roles might be a bit old fashioned, and people are going to be saying, well, it's a 200-year-old novel. Yeah. Like, I mean, in fairness, it is that as well. But still, I think it's something that it's something I think you pick up on in the film. The guy's aggressive, the woman is kindly, and that's kind of it's pretty simply delineated.
Yes. And actually, I do think it's a problem with the film because, there are suggestions that the Mia Goth character is interested in science and, kind of does...
entomology.
Yes, and so on. So they could have played that up a bit more in more interesting ways, really. And certainly, whatever spark of sexual attraction that you're told they feel for each other. It's really, it doesn't come across.
When you were talking about stillness in acting, it's interesting because Jen was just saying before that, thinking about Jacob Elordi, so she's seen him in one thing before this, which was this teen thing, and she's really worried about what he'll be like in Wuthering Heights, which is the upcoming adaptation by Emerald Fennell, which people are kind of really worried about, because it's like it looks like hypersexualized. People aren't that sure about Margot Robbie's casting. I know Jen is.
Guillermo del Toro film has a little bit of Wuthering Heights. Actually.
Well, what she was saying, which was interesting to me, was that having had a kind of sense of Jacob Elordi from what little she's seen of him as this kind of teen, sort of pretty boy, vacant kind of thing, what she got from his performance here is that he can do an awful lot with stillness and an awful lot when he doesn't have anything to play. That's a bit unkind, but an awful lot when he doesn't have dialogue, for one thing. He spends a lot of this film without dialogue. He's doing a lot with gesture, with his stance on screen, with his face, that kind of thing. And so now, like one of the things, because Wuthering Heights is like her favourite novel, or one of them, and the question of is Heathcliff going to be the Heathcliff that he should be? Is sort of she finds things to see in what Jacob Elordi's doing here.
Yes,
that would make sense for Heathcliff as well. Someone who, again, from what I understand, I've read Wuthering Heights, doesn't speak very much or has kind of elements of stillness to him, that kind of thing.
Well, he can do broody.
Yeah.
And he can do sexy. I mean, what was the other Emerald Fennell film that we saw about the rich guy who invites the poor guy into...
So we didn't see that together. I haven't seen it.
Okay, I've seen it.
Saltburn is what it was called.
Yeah, Saltburn. He's terrific in that.
Yeah.
And actually, he's got this great self-assurance of playing an upper-class guy who's oblivious to everything and is very sexy in it, really.
I mean, I will approach Wuthering Heights exactly the same way that I approach this, which is like, I've vaguely heard of it. I don't know the story.
But anyway, I think the important thing is really that, we've been focusing quite a lot on the faults. And the fact is that I think it's really enjoyable, and I think it's really, really rich, and it's gorgeous to look at. And I had a really wonderful time, and I wasn't bored at all.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. As long as your cinema turns the bass down just a little bit on that front speaker.
Yeah, no, we should mention it to them, actually.
I have done. I said so after the screening.
Yeah, okay.
Because I do think it's something that was just with our screening, unfortunately. But basically, as long as you can understand the dialogue, that's probably a plus for you.
Yeah. That is a major thing, that because I felt it really affected my appreciation of the film.
Yeah, I agree.
I felt that I can't engage with the thematic issues very well because I felt I didn't really kind of understand them because a lot of it is being conveyed by dialogue, and I missed out on quite a lot of it.
Yeah. And actually, because on the other hand, there's the music, which I really, really liked. I think the music is used... I mean, it's not that I can remember what the piece is or whatever, but I remember the way in which it was used to motivate certain scenes, to run underneath it while things were being acted. Like when... I think particularly when the big experiment is happening. It really sets a great tempo for that and a great mood. So, like, the sound absolutely has its qualities. I think we missed out on some of them. Yeah. But I had a very good time. I mean, you're saying some of your friends were being quite sort of grumpy about it.
Yes. I mean, I'll never get those 2 hours of my life back. I mean, come on, really.
Yeah.
Right. I feel if that's your attitude, you haven't been going to the movies recently because, there are so many movies that offer so much less. Or different kind of things. I mean... I love Kelly Reichardt. I think she's one of the great, great filmmakers. But they showed the trailer just before Frankenstein. And you go, my God, like, is this the way the film really looks?
What's her new film?
It's a heist film with Josh O'Connor.
I think we arrived late, so I don't think we saw that trailer, maybe.
And, it just looked awful, really. I mean, not that it looked like an awful film, but just the visuals looked awful. Right, and there were other films, that the visuals look awful and they are awful and it's kind of dull and like, I mean, this is one of the better offerings, I've seen this year, really. The
mastermind is Kelly Reichardt.
I'm dying to see it. I mean, I think she is like one of the truly great filmmakers, but the film has a completely washed out look. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to go to that film because kind of the way that it looks.
Yeah.
So I think in comparison to many of the films that I've seen this year, this is, kind of right up there, really.
I suppose one last thing to think about is that Frankenstein comes hot on the heels, as they say, of Tron Ares, which was the last film we saw on the podcast.
Yes.
And both will have a Frankenstein element. This one is actually called Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And, they say that the horror films in particular that people are making at the time kind of speak to the worries of the time. And so is there something in the worries of the demons that we're making and the AIs and the blah, blah, blah? I think probably not.
I mean, if there are, I can't read them, because actually this is kind of, I mean, I suppose you could, you can resonate, it can have certain resonance with AI and robotics and, but it's not, I mean, the whole point about this film is, so it's also the point of many films. Yeah, that kind of, you create this machine that then begins to think for itself. I think what makes Frankenstein different is that it's not just about thinking. Yeah, it's almost like Frankenstein develops a soul.
Well, yes.
And
Well, I mean, in fairness, the same thing's going on with Tron, wasn't it? It was, essentially it's Frankenstein, it's Pinocchio, I want to be a real boy. I actually have life, I deserve life, and so on. And the question is, are we the monsters? And should we be able to play God? But I think there's no point in history, human history at least, where you couldn't tell the Frankenstein story and find some relationship to us playing God in some sense. It's what we do.
Yeah.
That is the human condition.
True.
Farming is playing God, So.
Yes. I mean, I am kind of interested in the way that the film has, an 18th century concern, really, not even, a 19th one, with science and religion, the soul, the mind, a construct that loves, So kind of, it has a much more of an accent on emotion, than, other films that you see, like, for example, that recent series with, what's his name, Skarsgård, about, the robot, that kind of then develops feeling, that's playing on Apple.
Oh, I don't know.
That is really all about, mind and power and control. It really isn't about love or feeling or, what is the last line in the film from Byron is, what is it? Life breaks you.
So you get something about you having a broken heart, but it lives on brokenly.
Yes.
Along those lines. I think he probably said it a bit better than I did.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. But anyway, it is kind of dealing with the heart and with heartbreak and with life, continuing.
The heart will break, but broken live on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But I do think it does, to me, it does kind of come down to that grounded thing we're talking about. I was saying it kind of glibly about the thing about parenting, but it really is about that. It's not parenting in the sense of how you're going to raise it, because that's much more the concern of one bad after another in a much more kind of real sense, parenting. But in the sense of your responsibility for something that you make, and then the inability to handle it when it is its own thing.
Yeah,
which is absolutely like he's a shit dad in this, and he decides that he can burn the kid to the ground effectively, and obviously he's not able to, but he has to pay the price for that. And to me, that's really how the film kind of plays thematically. That's the kind of that's the kind of thematic tone that I'm left thinking about.
Well, it begins and ends. I mean, those are the bookends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he is turned into a monster by having a monstrous father at the beginning. Yeah, though monster there in a metaphoric sense. And then, he creates a child who then also becomes a kind of monster because of the way he's treated, until they both find a slightly different path at the end.
Well, that's it. He breaks the cycle, right? So the cycle is the bad father generates the bad father, next generation down, but that one learns to forgive, understand what he's been through, forgive, and he breaks the cycle. He walks off into the sunset with a new life awaiting him somehow. Yeah, that's what it's about, really.
Yes, where in the sequel he'll come and kill again.
Yeah. Frankenstein 2. This time it's personal. And then it'll be Frankenstein 3, The Legend of Curly's Gold.
So let's wrap this up. I mean, I think it's a really, really rich film. I think I will be seeing it again. And I think, I do want to explore so much more of the costuming, the design, kind of, and not just in itself, but really how it's mobilized, right, into the storytelling, in a way that I'm sure a second look will make everything so much richer.
Good for you. I think I'll leave it at 1, but I'm happy with that 1.
Oh, yeah.
It was nice. It was good fun.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and YouTube Music. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.